If a little voice in your head told you to turn around, would you listen to it? If a strange woman appeared in the backseat of your car, would you pay attention to her? And if something really wanted to trick you, how would you know? We speak with Tony and Jill Cox Cordova, a couple that we met on Fireside who live here in the Atlanta area. And they're also very haunted. Sit back and hear some very spooky stories today on Homespun Haints. Hello, Hainted Loves. Welcome to Homespun Haints. I'm Becky.
And I'm Diana.
And today on the show, we are so excited to bring you Tony and Jill Cox Cordova. They are this amazing couple that we have had the opportunity to speak with. We've been on their show and we've met them in person. They're just a lot of fun. You're really going to enjoy talking to them. And you're also going to be pretty impressed with how many spooky stories they have.
That's true. I was.
Since Jill and Tony are very close to here, where I am in northern Atlanta, I thought it would be fun to talk about a place that Diana and I just visited a few days ago.
Indeed. Yes. It was a very haunted place.
We've talked about this place before on the show. It's the Kennesaw House, which is now the Marietta History Center in Marietta Square. And if you remember our previous bonus episode, the 4 most haunted places in Atlanta, the Kennesaw House is definitely on the list. It is home to over 700 ghosts.
Which sounds like the beginning of a kid's horror movie, right?
The House of a 700 Ghosts.
Or a ride rivaling a mansion that is haunted.
It was intense. I mean, we went there, and the minute we walked in the door,
we started feeling things right away. And we, of course, as we're wont to do, we cornered one of the employees to grill her about her experiences. And she said, I'm fine just listening to other people's stories, but man, some of our volunteers have some really spooky things that have happened to them.
We talked to another volunteer and she immediately brought out a bunch of high quality printed laminated photos of a ghost caught on camera.
Yeah, of a spooky woman going from the elevators. Mostly just a pillar of light though.
Yes.
But with a large dress shape. She was going from the elevators to the front desk. So probably a visitor.
Tell me a little bit about what your experiences were like in this museum, Diana.
Well, when we first walked in, on the first floor, you have to enter through the gift shop, as is appropriate. There are a few adorable little artifacts on the first floor, but most of the display is on the second floor. The thing I loved most about the first floor antiques were that they were just put in the gift shop with stuff on them for sale. So that was fun. I got to interact with those pieces. But everything in the museum was made in the Marietta area. So it was all locally produced things. But as we were walking in and standing, speaking with the employee, I felt the floor moving underneath my feet as though I was on an elevator. And this was just in certain exact points within the museum on the first floor.
Right. It did feel like the floor kind of had a little bit of a motion to it.
It did.
But this is not on a fault line or anything. There was no train going by. It was just odd.
Which is an important distinction because there is a train track that goes right by the front door. But yeah, we didn't hear any sounds or sense any other movement in the room. There was just a certain spot where you could stand and feel the floor moving up and down as though it was dropping out from underneath you. So that was very creepy feeling, but I kind of brushed it off because I figured it was just
700 ghosts.
It was just the ghosts stomping. And then when we went upstairs, we went through most of the museum uneventfully, reading the displays, taking selfies, because
there were some odd contraptions in there.
There was some fun stuff, yes.
Oh, yes. Tell us about the x-ray machine, Diana.
Oh, goodness. Okay, so this is one I already knew existed. We're going to post a TikTok video about it here soon. So if you're not already a follower on TikTok, make sure you do that now so that you'll get that full video. This is an interesting device, a contraption, which has an x-ray video inside of it. So it's video fluoroscopy of a sort. And it is a large box, maybe 3 foot by 3 foot, where you put your 1 foot inside the bottom of the box, and then you move aside a little piece of lead to gaze within the box put your eyeballs right up against that box and shoot x-rays through your foot into your eyeballs.
To see if your shoe fits correctly.
It's a shoe store sales item. It's so that you can stick your foot in there and the salesperson at the shoe store can be like, yep, that looks perfect. It fits you real good. Wiggle your toes. See, that's your foot. There's another viewing port for the sales clerk at the shoe store, and probably a third one for a parent to look through as well, because this is probably for kids, right, who don't really have the language to say, yes, this shoe is tight right here.
Oh, yeah, and this box, let's just say it's like a wooden box.
Yeah.
Like pine box.
Yeah, it was classy. I'm sure it was an oak box. But anyway,
still,
yeah,
it's
it
not
was just
lead.
a wooden box. Who knows exactly what protections were in place. But this was an extremely common device. And in fact, Amber's grandma worked in a shoe store long time ago where she got to run this device.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. It was pretty horrifying, and Becky was horrified when I explained to her what it does. She walked right past it, and then I was like, oh, they have one of these.
I was like, what? What? That was not the only scary thing in there, aside from the ghosts. There was also that contraption that would perm your entire head at once.
Yeah.
And it
with
looked
heat.
Yeah, it looked like it was for children who probably couldn't sit through the entire procedure. It looked like something out of a sci-fi horror movie where they're like going to extract your brains out of your head, this alien technology. But it was like this thing that went around your head and it had all these like metal wires and coils and all that. And they had a picture of a little girl in it, and the mom is next to her smiling and the little girl is not.
Apparently you pour lye in the hair and then wrap it around these hot rollers that are attached to this electric device that looks very much like the explanation behind why the Bride of Frankenstein has hair the way she does.
Yes. Yeah.
For your child.
So if you did not grow up in the 1940s, be grateful.
Yeah, it's probably a good thing. But there were several other fascinating things that I had never seen before. For example, the world's smallest functional revolver, which was about the size of a quarter.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I was fascinated by ye old Victorian specula.
That was indeed.
They had two speculums. Specula. And not the kind we talked about on our episode on specula.
No. Definitely it takes a really long time to widen this. So scooch all the way down and sit still. Yeah.
Crank.
Yeah, they had a backdoor specula right next to it.
Oh, yeah, that's right. They did.
Speculum. So we go through the whole museum, just kind of peering around. And then Becky turns around and she says, does it smell like gunpowder in here?
That was in the corner. There was an area of the museum I went over to, and I was just looking at the display, and then I looked next to me, and there was a door that was open. It was clearly like an employee-only kind of door, and it struck me as odd because I was like, I don't remember that door being open 2 seconds ago. I would have noticed. It wasn't open 2 seconds ago, and suddenly it was open. And I thought, okay, maybe I just didn't see it. I kind of started peering in to see what was back there. I didn't go in. I knew I shouldn't have, especially not if somebody was leading me in there. I wasn't going to go in. And it was all dark. And as I'm like kind of peering around the door, I got a whiff of something kind of sour, sulfury. It was just a whiff, but I was having a hard time placing it. At first I was like, is that gas? That's not gas. No, that smells like gunpowder. It was like fresh gunpowder. I was moving back and forth in the space, and then it disappeared. I can't explain it. I also can't explain how that door opened.
We asked the volunteer, and she was baffled.
Yeah.
She had no explanation for
Right,
that.
exactly.
There were some very old guns somewhat nearby from
Right.
World War II, but I really doubt they'd been fired anytime recently.
These were actually Civil War guns in this area, bayonets and things. And they were behind glass cases. I've been to plenty of Civil War exhibits and not smelled that.
I went in the corner. I did not smell any gunpowder, so I think it was a message specifically for Becky.
Was the door open when you went back there?
I don't recall.
Oh, you would have noticed if it was.
Perhaps.
Yeah, that's weird. Okay, but that's not the only odd thing that happened to us.
Oh, no, that was fairly normal by comparison. As we're rounding the corner behind the creepy foot x-ray machine, Becky starts to not feel so great.
Yeah, I felt really nauseous.
Yeah, and this is something that people who visit the Kennesaw House report frequently, that some of the exhibits make them feel nauseated.
I walked away from it to see if it would fix things, and sure enough, I felt fine.
Yeah.
And then all three of us, myself, Diana, Amber, we all walked through the area and we all kind of felt off.
Yeah, it was a different experience for each of us because Becky felt mostly nauseated and kind of sick and dizzy. And then Amber walked back there and she turned around and said, I feel all the hairs on my head standing up.
Like static electricity, kind of.
Uh-huh. And so she walked out of the area and felt fine again. I walked into the area and I felt very similar to what Amber felt, I guess, kind of a prickling sensation kind of going all over my skin. So I guess that's very similar to your hair standing up. It felt like I was walking into an electrical field.
Or you're becoming a cactus. Cactus Diana.
A cactus. Sexy fashion cactus. My spines retract. So yes, I felt like all my spines had come out. So that was an interesting feeling. But several times, you know me, I'm trying to get a real handle on this. So I closed my eyes and walked kind of back and forth through the area slowly, trying to figure out where exactly this happened. So it was interesting that it was a different physical sensation for each of us. Mm-hmm. Becky, do you think it was a fear cage moment that we were experiencing since it was all in the same locale?
I don't know. Like, I just felt sick. And I mean, I couldn't walk back in there again. Like, I was just, no. Well, I exposed myself to it.
You weren't playing around with it like I was.
Yeah. Well, you know, there's a difference between feeling like a sexy cactus and feeling like you're going to vomit.
Yeah, that's true.
Unless you're one of those self-vomiting cacti. You know, if a sea cucumber, like a sea sexy cucumber maybe would. Never mind. We're just going to stop right there before I go down a weird tangent.
No more sexy sea cucumbers. When we rounded the corner, there was another little display that was a little bedroom that had a couple of historical figure mannequins creepily turning their backs on us and looking out the windows. And Amber then had the sensation of the floor dropping out from under her feet in a completely different section of the building in a completely different floor.
Was that the room that had the guy looking out the window?
Yep.
We found out afterward that is where people report the most activity in that room.
And this was before I told Amber that I had that experience downstairs. Because remember, when we were on the first floor, I kind of dismissed it as, oh, must be a car going by or something like that. So we went back down to the first floor after looking at all the displays and stood in the same spot. And I was able to kind of feel it in the same spot. Mm-hmm. And then Becky and Amber stood in the same spot and didn't feel anything going on.
Yeah. So weird. Yeah, so thankfully, we're finding ghosts. Diana came here to help me find ghosts, and she's finding them.
I did. I found several, it appears.
Yeah. And we have more to tell you about next week. But...
And it wasn't a very large place, so if there really are 700 ghosts there, I imagine that there's no square inch of that place where you're not walking through a ghost.
Mm-hmm. It's pretty packed. Well, it used to be 4 floors. The top one burned.
And they won't let you into the third because that's where their collections are stored.
But it was, of course, a Civil War hospital and a morgue.
But if you're interested in visiting the Kennesaw House, it is near the Marietta Square in Marietta, Georgia.
Yeah, it's pretty much right on the square. It's very close to it. Yeah.
Northwest of Atlanta. And they are currently running a ghost hunting event, Fright Night. You can show up and a psychic medium will, I guess, do readings for you on either the ghosts or the living that are participating. I guess your call, her call. And you get ghost hunting equipment to wander around. And I'm guessing that with 700 ghosts, you'll pick up something, most likely.
Yeah, I'd say so. It's a pretty haunted place.
And they'll give you the ghost tour, which will explain all the different stories that we didn't really get to hear.
They'll give you the ghost tour of Marietta Square, too, because as we know, this is the same place where I had my haunted gallery. Everything there is haunted.
Yeah, apparently there are how many bodies suspected underneath the square?
I don't even remember.
Oh.
A lot.
A lot.
Yes, it was a makeshift burial ground at one point. So please pay attention to our TikTok at Homespun Haints and our Instagram at Homespun Haints, where we're posting things that we're doing out and about Atlanta and finding haunted things while we're here.
Yes, if you'd like to haunt us,
yes,
you're welcome
please.
to join us there on TikTok at Homespun Haints. But for right now, let's get haunted with our new friends from Kennesaw, Jill and Tony.
We are Castles and Cryptids, where the castles are haunted and the cryptids are cryptic as fuck. We're a couple of Canadian chicks who are fascinated by freaky shit. So join us as we fall down numerous rabbit holes.
Numerous, so very many rabbit holes. Fortune telling.
Yeah.
And this is episode 68. What
Yeah, it
lurks
is.
in the woods?
We're doing some axe crimes, axe murders, people hacked up. Yeah.
But yeah, we are doing high kill counts.
Yeah, the most killerist serial killers around.
Ah, the killiest of the killy. We are doing abandoned places. We talk true crime, cryptids, haunted AF stuff, and much, much more.
There are definitely some movie tangents in there too, because we love our horror movie chat.
Yes, we do. So feel free to follow us on social media at Castles and Cryptids, and don't forget to keep it cryptic, eh?
Yeah.
Today on the show, we have two very special guests that we met through the Fireside app, which is a platform that we've done some live shows with. And they are also north of Atlanta. Please give a warm welcome to fellow podcasters and Atlantans, Tony and Jill Cox Cordova. Thank you guys so much for being here.
We're excited to be here.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
And you all have your own show. Tell us a little bit about that.
It's called I'm Right.
I'm right,
But really, I'm right.
but I am right. And Jill knows that.
And believe it or not, it's about relationships and how you can disagree about everything, but still have a healthy and happy relationship.
That's it. But that's not what we're here for tonight, Jill.
No, it's not.
No, but do tell us a little bit about how long you've been doing your show and how you got started with it. What kind of was your inspiration behind it? And then also tell us a little bit about yourselves, because you guys are also writers, artists, all the things. You have such a rich history of so many things that you do. Let's just start with the show. So what was your inspiration for that?
So the reason we chose I'm Right is because we noticed that just about anywhere we went in public, we could just be having a conversation and strangers would just stop and start listening.
Like they were watching a tennis match. They would go,
Yeah.
and they would tell me I was right.
Yeah.
Oh, they'd kind of team up like a bridal party on one
That's
side.
right.
Yeah. So we're really about kindness and peace and love. And we really wanted to show that you can have a partner that you disagree with on things, but there's no need for it to be a shouting match or anything like that. You always do it with love. So that's how that came about.
Wow. It sounds like a
agree.
lot of respect
Yeah.
as well.
Exactly.
Yes,
if you can
definitely.
respectfully disagree, that's healthier than always agreeing with each other.
Right,
Let's be
exactly.
real.
Right.
Yeah.
Some of us enjoy a healthy debate. Tony, I know you have the radio background, and Jill, you have a journalism background.
I do. I was a TV journalist mostly for more than 2 decades.
And you and I and my husband met for lunch a few weeks ago, which was
Which was
awesome.
great.
Did.
Yeah, that was so cool. It was a very long lunch. I don't think any of us wanted to leave. We just had so much fun talking. And Tony, you're a poet. You have your career, and then you have your art and all the things that you do. Tell us a little bit about your background.
I'll go really quickly. I grew up in New York, in Long Island. I became a architectural draftsman, which I was very good at, just didn't like it. Didn't like being in the office. So I decided I would become a truck driver. And I moved to Georgia at age 22. I bought my first truck at age 23. By the time I was maybe 30, I had 6 trucks. 6 employees, I guess. All during that time, I was extremely depressed. Didn't know it. I thought that was just life. So I was diagnosed clinically with depression. I don't know, a few years before I met Jill, I started writing spoken word poetry, and it was kind of therapy for me. I wrote a book of poetry. I have since written another book of poetry. I'm going to launch another show on Fireside, and that's going to feature me and
Just him.
and my poetry. And other
Oh,
poets.
cool.
And other artists.
Well, it sounds like you guys have a lot in common.
Actually
You can
do.
argue and still be friends. So that's a good sign.
Yes.
And Jill, you're a writer as well.
I am. I actually went back to school. I had a master's in journalism before I ever started my career in journalism. But I went back to school in 2015 to get my MFA in creative writing. And because I had been a journalist for so long, I wanted to do exact opposite. So I studied fiction. But when the pandemic started, I found it was really difficult for me to fictionalize anything. So since then, I've been writing personal essays. And my full-time job now is I work for a national magazine, and I'm an editor.
You guys have such incredible resumes. On top of these incredible careers that you have and all of the talents and projects that you both have some incredible supernatural stories. And I know that Tony, when I first reached out and was like, would you guys like to come on the show? Jill said, oh, I think you just want to talk to Tony. It's okay if you don't want to talk to me. And I was like, no. We got to have you both on. But I do know that Tony grew up in New York, and I know there was some ghosts, but that's about all I know. So I'll just let you tell your stories.
Okay. So a little background. My father had gifts. And my father was old enough to be my grandfather. He would tell me that when he was born, they said that he was born with a veil. Are you familiar with the veil? Well, my father had one. And for those that don't know, a veil is a person that is, in his case, born with some gifts. He could see things that other people could not see. He's told me that, and he would tell me ghost stories. Some ghost stories. Well, because these are the people he would see. Just as real to him as you and I talking at lunch. Ghosts liked him and his cars. My father would buy used cars, but quite often he would buy the car, but he also bought something else along with the car. This one car he had, he would drive it, and he grew up in Brooklyn, New York. And he would drive, and every time he got to this one street in front of this one brownstone, the car would just shut off. Every time he'd come there, he could sit there in front of this brownstone for 10, 15 minutes. Then the car would just start right up. But he could go around the block and come back to that brownstone, and it would cut off. So he says, gosh, what is this? What is it about this car? So he went back to the guy he bought the car from. He said, this car is shutting off every time I go down such and such street, and it stops in such and such brownstone. And the guy says, that's that man's car. So what are you talking about, that man's car? That's his car. You bought his car. He's dead, and you bought his car. So every time you stop there, that's in front of his house. And that's one story. My father bought another used car, and quite often he'd look in the rearview mirror, and there's a woman sitting in the back seat. So he turns around to see her, but she's not there. He's wondering, what the heck is this woman doing in my car, But he can look in the mirror, and there she is. And he had a good description of her. He said, yeah, the woman was about 5'2". Her hair was up in a bun. She wore a coat with a fox collar. So he had real detail on this woman. So this is going on for months. At the time, my father and mother were dating, and she was in the car when he's seeing this woman in the back seat. And he's like, can't you see her? No, I can't see her. Surely you could see her. Look in the mirror. Can't you see her? No, I can't see this woman. But he could obviously see this woman. So same thing. He went to the guy he bought the car from and said, hey, there's this woman sitting in my back seat. I can see her in the mirror. And he described her and he says, yeah, that was the previous owner of this car. So I grew up with those types of stories. Never thought anything of it until I realized it was happening to me. But mine was different. I remember one time I was with my best friend, and one of the girls in the neighborhood came up to us, and we might have been 12, 13 years old. And she said something, how you guys doing? Small talk. And then she walked away. And I say to my friend, she's really sad. He said, what are you talking about? So she's really sad. And her stepfather does things to her. And he said, what do you mean? He said, how do you know that? I said, just look at her. Can't you tell? He said, no, I don't see anything. And that's when I realized that I could read people or feel people. So then I kept quiet. I started really paying attention to if I heard a little voice in my head telling me not to do something, I would not do it. There was one time I was 16 years old, 16 or 17. My father and I were looking for a car for me to buy. And when you're that age, you want to drive all the time. So I drove us to where the car was. But when it was time for us to leave, I said, I don't want to drive. And my father says, no, you drive. You just got your license. You want to drive. I don't want to drive. He kept insisting that I drive. 5 minutes later, I was in my first accident. So I always listen to the voice. So I was a truck driver for many years, driving 18-wheelers all over the country. And I was owner-operated back then. And I was in upstate New York, headed to Rochester from like somewhere downstate New York. But it had started to snow, and it was at night. And I was really, really sleepy. I had been awake for like 38 hours. But there was about a foot of snow on the ground already. And with an 18-wheeler, you just can't pull over anywhere. But I'm trying to stay awake. I'm so tired. And this other driver gets behind me. He gets on the CB radio. He says, hey, driver, how you doing? I said, yeah, I'm doing all right. I'm just, pretty tired, He says, okay, well, I'll follow behind you until you get to where you're going. He said, where are you going? I said, I'm trying to make it to the Pembroke truck stop, which is on the New York Thruway. And it was about 80 miles away. He says, okay, so we're talking. And I don't really remember what we talked about. Could have anything, just general conversations about different things and all of that. But we were 80 miles away. We talked to each other on the CB for about 2 hours. We finally got on to the New York Thruway, and I'm coming up to the Pembroke exit. Now, the New York Thruway is made in such a way that once you get off the exit to pay your toll, you can't make any other turns. You can't turn right. You can't turn left. You can't turn around. You're going to have to go through the toll. So I pull up to the toll and I'm looking in the mirror, and the driver that was driving with me, he's right behind me. So I pull up to the toll booth and I pay my toll. And I look in the mirror, the truck's gone. The truck that followed me and talked to me for 2 hours is gone. It was right behind me when I paid my toll. As soon as I paid my toll, poof, gone.
Oh. He made sure you made it to the exit.
Yeah. And in my truck driving In my truck driving career, things like that have happened many times. It may not have been a truck. It may have been a voice. I had one night and I was feeling good. It was almost midnight and I was going to drive like another 200 miles that night. And all of a sudden in my head, a voice said, "Get off the next exit." I didn't even know what exit it was because I wasn't paying attention. So I immediately just got off the exit and listened. And I parked my truck and I went to sleep. I wake up the next morning and the first thing I used to do was turn on the CB radio to see what the road conditions are like and all of that. And I hear all these truck drivers saying, "Hey, yeah, they just opened the road back up." I said, "Open the road?" I got on. I said, "What do you mean, drivers?" They said there was a terrible wreck going eastbound on the interstate. I said, "What happened?" "Oh, some truck lost control. 8 people got killed and all of that." I said, "Wow, that's messed up." They said, "But they're just now opening the road." So then I said, "What time did that happen?" Midnight. The exact same time I heard the voice to tell me, "Get off the exit now."
Oh. Whoa.
But again, these things are kind of normal in my life.
Jill, you have a very interesting story, which I know nothing about except that it completely changed your life.
Yes, it did. So it was either 2018 or 2019. One night I was saying to Tony, I'm going to write just what comes to mind. I'm not going to censor myself. I'm just going to write what comes to mind. I did that. And the next day I was telling him about the story, but I kept confusing my protagonist. Sometimes I would call her name Faye. Sometimes I would call her name Flo. And I couldn't get it straight. And I couldn't understand why I couldn't get my own character's name straight. We have a friend who has incredible gifts. And I was mentioning this to her, and she says, "Oh, that's because you think you're writing about fictional people." And I was like, "Well, I don't know anyone named Flo. My aunt's middle name is Faye, but that's not who I was writing about." I couldn't figure it out. So she told Tony to help me. He said, "Maybe they're sisters. Maybe you should Google Faye and Flo and see what comes up." So I did, and it turns out that Faye and Flo are sisters, and they were real people. And Flo Kennedy was like the face of Black feminism back in Gloria Steinem's heyday. And I had written a story the previous year where I named a character Flo, and I had her dressed in cowboy attire. And that's exactly how Flo Kennedy used to dress. So I'm like, whoa. So Flo had been deceased for many years. Faye had just passed away. So I thought, oh, she chose me. I'm supposed to write about her. She chose me. Faye became this renowned civil rights activist in the state of Hawaii. In fact, she was instrumental in getting the state, which was one of the last 3 states, to make MLK a state holiday. And so from there, she was just a civil rights activist for every injustice that she saw and heard. So I thought, oh my goodness, I'm supposed to write about Faye, because there's plenty written about Flo. In fact, she's been portrayed by Niecy Nash in a movie and all of these things. So she's very famous. No one outside of Hawaii knew very much about Faye.
Now, during all of this time, Faye has been coming to me and telling me stuff. So she's telling me, tell her to get with it. Tell her to hurry up. Tell her
and
quit messing around.
Tell her, why does Flo have to be part of this story? Because I'm doing my research. I'm using my journalism skills to investigate, and I'm doing all sorts of research before I write a single word. But I guess I wasn't doing it fast enough for her because she kept coming to him.
Coming to me.
So I just felt like,
what was the hurry?
I'm not sure.
Jill was dragging. That's what the
Well,
problem was.
no, I was researching.
See, and in Faye's mind, she was dragging.
I was researching.
Okay.
But at the same time that I'm learning about how, well, the two of them believe that everyone should be an everyday activist. And they believe that all activists should come together regardless of your cause because there's strength in numbers. So if everyone fights for everybody, then you get more done. And I thought, oh, wow, what a concept. And it's going on at the same time. There's George Floyd, there's Breonna Taylor. All of these things are going on in the present day. And so I'm reckoning with myself about what I can do as an everyday activist. So I start writing about what they did. And at the same time, my writing mentors are like, you need to write a memoir. You need to write about yourself. And I'm like, I'm a former journalist. I don't write in first person. I'm writing about them. And they were like, they would send me like books and structures of how many books have been written where it's part biography and part memoir. So that's what I started writing. And I enrolled in more classes to learn how to do that because I was very uncomfortable writing in first person. And so we even go to Hawaii. I connect with people who were part of Faye's life. They even invited me to her 1-year death memorial. It was virtual. And so I was like, well, I've got to go to Hawaii to like really write about her because I felt I kept coming across roadblocks because the person who actually had Faye's papers and writings and things like that wanted nothing to do with me because she felt that I was capitalizing on her estate. And I wasn't trying to. So anyway, we went to Hawaii in December of last year, and I ended up meeting only one person that I had set up interviews to do with. And so I was like, well, how in the world am I going to turn this into a book?
So Jill started getting this feeling because she kept running into obstacles.
It didn't feel peaceful. Like when you're supposed to be doing something, you feel at peace. I didn't feel at peace at all.
Not at all. And then that's when things started going wrong.
Yes.
I've had many businesses besides my trucking business, by the way. So at this time, I had a business, the storage wars that they have, buying and selling storage units. So I would get stuff from storage units. I would sell just about all of it. But I had one unit, there were all these nice, unique earrings. And they were new. They were in the package, but they were very unique. So I asked Jill, hey, Jill, you like any of these? So she says,
and I loved
yeah,
them all because they were very artsy looking. And I loved them all. So that is very important to the story because as things just went wrong, I stopped writing for a bit because I was just trying to figure out what to do. And so around that time, through Fireside, I met someone who identifies as a witch, and she has sessions. So I scheduled a session with her, not to talk about this at all. Yes. I was talking to her because at night, the bed would shake like it was an earthquake, but just on our bed, around our bed. It would just like shake us, both of us. I was wearing some of the earrings that he had given me from the storage unit. So I had these earrings on, and all of a sudden she's like looking around, and I was like, who's with you? And she's like, I don't think they're supposed to be here for you, but let me ask. And she's like, who are you? And she's like, there's this really old white woman with bright lipstick on, and she wants me to ask you about your earrings. So the earrings I was wearing belonged to the woman that she could see, and she's a fairy. The woman is a fairy. And so Fairy was upset. Perhaps Faye had come to me to write her story at some point, but the fairy sent her there. And the fairy was just like messing around with us. So when I stopped, she starts shaking her bed. And so I was just like, she's like, it's not that she's dangerous, but she's manipulative. So I was like, well, what about the book? And the person I was having the session with, you're not supposed to write that book. She just set that up. I was like, so for a year and a half, I've been writing this book. We went to Hawaii, and I was never supposed to write the book.
Yes. So what bothered me about it is I'm the empath. I can feel. I couldn't tell. So the fairy had possessed Faye and
Faye.
Flo's energy.
Energies, yes.
And I remembered I thought back. I was like, how come I didn't catch that? How come I didn't catch that? You know, I'm really thinking, but I thought back when Faye had said, why does Flo have to be in the book? But I know that on the other side, energy is not like that. That
yeah, they don't care.
Yeah, there's no hate. There's no, pettiness. There's none of that is there. And I'm like, well, how come?
And in real life, Faye, who was 15 years younger than Flo, idolized Flo in real life. Yeah. So the fairy was upset and was shaking her bed. The person that I did the session with, she told me to basically spiritually cleanse the jewelry and get rid of it. I did that, and the bed didn't shake, but sometimes it was like lighter.
It
was just vibrate.
Vibrate. Yes. Remember those old beds in the old motels? You put like a quarter
Motel 6,
in, and the bread would vibrate.
The magic fingers.
Like that. Yeah. Yes. So finally, I just had to say, "I'm sorry, fairy. Please go away." And she did.
But she kept coming back.
Oh.
A little bit.
Yeah,
kept coming back.
Yeah, like every now and then. A couple of nights ago, I should have been up to get ready for work, but I kept hitting my snooze button, and I was partially out of the cover, and I knew that Tony actually leaves for work early, then I get up. And so I knew he was gone, and something or somebody just slapped me on the butt. Freaked me out. But I got up.
It's time to get up.
That's an alarm clock business idea.
I'm just still kind of baffled by the fact that she went to all this trouble to lead you
for a year and a half. I worked on this book, but I felt as soon as I was told I wasn't supposed to write it, I felt at peace, and my writing has come easier since on other stories I'm working on.
A lot of things happen in our home, but it's not because the house is haunted. They're attracted to me and to Jill.
Yeah.
So they come around. I have another story for you. My mother-in-law's husband passed away. But maybe 2 years before that, I told them a ghost story, a real one, a real ghost story. And it really freaked both of them out, right? So just left that alone. They were saying I was crazy and, all kinds of stuff. And a lot of weird stuff they were saying, right?
It's my mother. Yes.
My mother-in-law, Jill's mother. Yes. So one Christmas, we gave him a watch, an inexpensive watch. This man had children also. But grown children, but they were no good. So we gave him this inexpensive watch thinking, we're not doing much. But he loved this watch. He loved it.
He put it on top of his TV. He didn't wear it at first. He just wanted to look at it on top of his TV.
So for months went by, and every time we go visit them, that watch is sitting there on display.
You can wear that, right?
Yeah. So we finally started wearing it. And I don't know how much longer after that did he pass away.
Probably about 2 years.
Maybe 2 years later, he passed away. A week after he passed away, in our bedroom, I have a dresser. And on the top drawer of my dresser, I keep my watches. And they're still in, some of them, the ones I don't wear all the time are, in their case. So I go to work. Jill calls me up. She says, "Hey, did you leave your watch on the dresser?" I said, "No." I said, I only wear those watches when we go somewhere different. Those aren't my everyday watches. She said, "But one of your watches is on the dresser." And it was displayed exactly the same way Frank would display his watch. So again, it was a week after his death, and he just wanted us to know that he appreciates us.
And the watch.
Yeah. And then when I got home, I told them, yeah, thanks for the message. Please don't come back. We don't want all of the energy coming in here all the time. And he hasn't.
Yeah, he hasn't.
That we know of. But
grandmother used to smoke, and so sometimes I can smell the smoke, and sometimes I can smell her perfume.
mm-hmm.
So that's comforting to me.
But a lot of stuff happens here.
Great storytelling for both of you.
Well,
Thank
you.
So thank you very much.
Awesome.
Well, pulling back to where people can find out more about you, Jill, I know that you said that there's a link tree where people can find all of the links and anything they want to find out about you and links to your fireside show and all of that.
It's sociotap/Jill Cox, COX_Cordova, CORDOVA. And that's where you can find my website, which has some of my published work on it, some of my short stories. So it's fiction and nonfiction there. There's stuff about Tony.
Yeah, there's stuff there about me, but you can't find me.
You can.
It's hard to find.
He doesn't know it, but he has a profile that he doesn't know about.
Yeah, but
Okay.
when I launch the new show, everybody will be able to find me. But right now, I'm in hiding.
We'll make sure we include that in our show notes for this episode so everybody who's listening can find it. Hainted Loves, I hope you enjoyed listening to Jill and Tony chat about their experiences. And you can find them on Fireside, and we will have links to all of that you can find on our show notes. And while you're there, please be sure you check out our website at homespunhaints.com. And while you're at it, please do check us out on TikTok. We just started our TikTok and we are trying so hard to reach our 1,000 subscribers so we can start bringing you live content on TikTok. And our handle on TikTok is at homespunhaints. And then, of course, we also have a Patreon. Please do consider supporting us if you like what we're doing. Patreon is how we are able to bring so much even extra bonus content to our lucky patrons, as well as ad-free episodes. Jill and Tony, always a delight to chat with you too. I'm so glad that we've had a chance to get to know you, and I know that we are going to be seeing so much more of you over months, years, whatever the universe brings to us coming forward. So thank you so much for being here today.
It's such a nice conversation. I see the way that you respectfully disagree with each other and bring it back around to love, and I really respect that. And I love the idea of people watching you argue in the grocery store and taking sides. I may become a part of it, but I'm not going to pick a side, because if I do, I might have a spooky day.
Homespun Haints is hosted by Becky Kielimnik and Diana Doty, and produced by Homespun Haints Media LLC. Editing and music by Becky Kielimnik. Show notes by Diana Doty. If you have a ghost story and you'd like to be considered as a guest for this podcast, please visit our website at homespunhaints.com/submit.